Unlike Bill, I couldn't go to bed at night without putting a Godzilla movie on the list. And I don't think that it's any secret to anyone in the whole wide world that my favorite Godzilla movie is Terror of MechaGodzilla
Mm.
from 1975. Um, God, it's
I'm
just
glad you
amazing.
put this on here instead of Gojira.
It's just amazing. It's got a fantastic score. It's got fucking Titanosaurus. Who doesn't love Titanosaurus? It's got just the reborn Mechagodzilla, and there's some great little like misdirects in the movie where Godzilla thinks he can beat him the same way he did before, but
Yeah,
like, nah,
that is really great.
his ass has been improved. There's like one of the best destruction sequences like I've ever seen. The one where him and Titanosaurus are just tearing shit up. Like there's
Hmm.
the one shot where he uses his finger missiles in the background, and you just see the foreground explode.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
that is because in the first one we never get to see Mechagodzilla destroy a city, and we
exactly.
get that in two, Terror rather. It's not two. That would be confusing if I started referring to it as that.
And it's the only time we've gotten it because all the other Mechagodzilla since then have been good guys. You know?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Um,
Kiyu goes on a rampage,
oh yeah, at one
which I
point.
think is supposed to be a reference to the scene that you're talking about.
Yeah, perhaps that's true. I didn't think of
It's the
that.
same city,
Um,
so yeah.
but also, and something that actually doesn't bog this movie down is this actually has a pretty good human story.
Yeah, it's
With your
great.
with your Doctor Mifune and your Katsura and your Interpol, and your Yugi Mans and your Pokios.
Yeah,
But
exactly. Your
so I mean, this movie,
your Ichinose.
yeah. So this movie is just great all around. Like I love every frame of it, and it sadly just didn't perform well at the time. I mean, the Japanese cinema business was kind of in the toilet at the time. Um,
Mm.
it's Honda's last, isn't it? Isn't it
Yeah,
like his
it's
last movie?
Honda. It's not his last movie. He co-directed a bunch of movies with
Kurosawa later
yeah,
on.
with
Yeah.
Kurosawa. I don't know if he directed anything on his own though. That's a good question. Well,
I don't.
the thing is, he largely directed a lot of those Kurosawa movies, so he might as well have directed a lot of those. So,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, but this was the last major one that I'm familiar with, and this is of course his last Godzilla movie. It is
It's also the end of the
so
Showa period.
yeah, of course. It is well, yeah. It is it's like so cool to see Honda get to do a 70s Godzilla movie because
Yeah.
it's not the same thing that he did in the 60s. It's like it's a story we would have seen in the 60s done in the style of a 70s Godzilla movie. And god is it cool. Like,
Yeah.
because you get
And,
this,
you know,
you get the James Bond ripoff stuff, and you get the '70s grain, and you get the blood and all that. But you also get
Yeah.
the really solid science fiction and the good alien invasion plot and the solid destruction scenes and good use of the monsters. It's in the dark in the grimmer tone. It's all just really it comes together in a really interesting and unique way.
Yeah, I know you were saying you were glad that I picked this movie instead of Gojira. Again, I think Gojira is the best movie in the franchise, but it's not my favorite. And honestly, I think this movie qualifies more for this list than Gojira does because it's more like out there sci-fi. Because you got aliens
Yeah,
and like giant
that is
robots
straight up
and,
science fiction. Yeah, whacked out science fiction.
like a dinosaur that's just sort of thrown in there. And I love Titanosaurus, and I wish they'd bring his ass back.
I think that they will.
Imagine Shin Titanosaurus.
Oh please, yes. That's how I fuck any other monsters. I know a lot of people are like, I want to see Shin King Ghidorah. No, I want to see Shin Titanosaurus.
Imagine how long that fucker's neck would be.
Yeah. Oh my god. Be longer
Jesus
than
Christ.
Godzilla's tail, mate. Oh my god.
Tiny little nub arms and shit.
Oh no. That's the thing. He would have giant arms and little feet and little legs.
His tail fan is all fucked up. Like maybe it's got like a big like bite taken out of it or
It's
some
got
shit.
like it's got like a turbine in it. Like it's madness. Anyway.
And of course, the googly eyes.
Oh, I love the googly eyes.
Oh, the googly eyes are the best. Why wouldn't you like the googly eyes?
They're my favorite. Anyway, go ahead.
I also really enjoyed the reversal of what we had in the last movie. In the last movie, it was like Godzilla and King Caesar teaming up to fight MechaGodzilla. In this movie, it's 2-on-1 in the other direction. Godzilla having to fight two enemy kaiju. I always thought that was a clever sort of reversal of the situation.
And there's an interesting. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, and I already alluded to, but the moment where he tears off MechaGodzilla's head thinking that that's going to kill him, and then there's the second head. Ah, genius. Genius.
That is amazing. Yeah, and then that I also like that the laser on that is stronger than his normal lasers. Like when he shoots Godzilla with that, Godzilla goes down. Like it fucks him up. And that's the other thing too. Godzilla gets really fucked up in this movie. Like he gets blown to smithereens at one point. Titanosaurus fucks him up even. Although I like that. Titanosaurus it's immediately established that Titanosaurus cannot take Godzilla without MechaGodzilla. Like, because that builds into the whole kind of tension between Dr. Mifune and the spacemen, because he's like, Titanosaurus can take Godzilla on their own. Fuck off with your dumb robot bullshit. It's all about flesh and me being able to control the flesh. But they're nah, bruh, nah, son, it's not happening. MechaGodzilla is the only thing that doesn't match for Godzilla. With Titanosaurus' help as a distraction.
It's clear that he's only there to sort of aid MechaGodzilla. Like, I really think that
they clearly did it because they're like, well, King Caesar worked well for Godzilla.
Yeah, I think they were really just sort of stacking the deck in their favor with that one. They were like, yeah, I don't know how useful this other kaiju is going to be in the fight itself, but support 2-on-1's always a good thing to have going for you.
Well, I like the kind of parallels between that and the first one, where Godzilla gets his ass handed to him in the first fight, in the first MechaGodzilla movie. And in this one, the first fight, he wins. And then in the second fight, he gets his ass handed to him, and another monster helps out MechaGodzilla.
He also has a great entrance in this movie, where he just shows up and interrupts the destruction scene that was going on.
That is potentially Godzilla's greatest entrance in the Showa series. Like, it's so badass. And again, it's Honda, man. Like, the grittiness of it, the lighting is incredible. We so rarely get Godzilla at night in the Showa series. Whenever we do, it's really great. Mm-hmm. Or if we do get him at night, it's like this weird day for night bullshit. But that's night. Yeah. That's dead on darkness and night shit. It's great. What else was I gonna say? I really like the very more serious take with the spacemen. They're great as goofy, whacked out supervillains in MechaGodzilla. But I really like the idea that these are people that claim to, and there's a little bit of this in the first one, that they think that they are better than humanity, and that they deserve the Earth, and that humanity is only an infestation that is making the Earth worse, which is a lot of, that's cliched now. That's a lot of what aliens talk about when they want to take over the world. But it's interesting because there's a lot of, like, thematically, there's a lot of, like, surplanting going on in terms of, like, replacements, where it's like you have Katsura dies, or she gets critically injured, and bits of her are replaced, turned into a cyborg. You have the idea of robotics replacing organic stuff, with MechaGodzilla replacing Titanosaurus. And then you have, like, MechaGodzilla replacing Godzilla. You have, the spacemen trying to replace humanity as the dominant species. I think it's really interesting. Again, Honda I really like getting to see Honda do a 70s Godzilla movie. So I'm really glad you mentioned that one, because that is a fantastic movie. Definitely, I would say it's definitely the best of the 70s Godzillas.
You also get, one of the most interesting, I think, villains in the franchise in Dr. Mifune, because of his
he's fantastic.
His backstory and his motivations, and how the aliens kind of wind up screwing him, and the shit that goes down just in that whole dynamic. And by the end, I think he winds up sort of, regretting it all a bit. He's a fantastic character. He's just very well rounded.
And again, I think it's what we're talking about with a lot of these. It's another instance of the human story is intrinsically linked to the monster story. They don't feel like these separate things that are completely imbalanced. There's a little bit of that. I think it gets a little flat in the middle, where it's in between Godzilla's fight with Titanosaurus and then when the city attack happens. And there's not a lot of space between that. But what space is there, I think you definitely feel. But that is a massive problem with a lot of Godzilla movies, especially of that era, where there's two major fights and the space between the two of them is the worst part of the movie.
Yeah, second act blues is very easy to happen in a kaiju film.
Yeah, especially when there's only two fights. Yeah,
I even get a little bit of it in more recently. I even get a little bit of it in, like, Shin Godzilla.
Shin Godzilla has that big time. So my number 4 is I finally got a traditional monster movie on here, D. I got a giant critter running around a city wrecking shit, and it kind of fights another thing. Sort of.
Welcome to the party.
Yeah, it's great. This hat, it's awesome. I got 20 Million Miles to Earth from 1950 something.
Yes, I knew this was going to be on your list.
This again, I think this fits more into the kind of sci-fi that we're really talking about here. That very, like, kind of classical, space age classic science fiction, where we have an adventure into outer space. An American adventure in outer space, importantly, that goes awry. A ship crashes to Earth. There's one survivor. Well, two survivors, kind of. There's one guy there's an egg, the egg hatches, and boom, giant... No, well, it starts up very small, actually. Scaly-looking monster. It grows. It starts terrifying the countryside of Italy. Interesting setting in this one. It keeps getting bigger. They finally capture it. They bring it to Rome, and of course, it gets loose and wreaks havoc.
It fights an elephant, so that's always
It does!
good.
That's what I meant before. It fights an elephant. It is... I don't think it's the best scene in the movie, because the integration of the stop motion and the live-action footage in that scene... I think is actually worse than an earlier scene in the movie where the military characters and like the police in Italy try and corner the monster and capture it, and that is an incredible scene. It is great. Like the integration between the stop motion and the live action actors is almost seamless. Like it's just as good as like your current green screen compositing effects. I think for the time.
Now you recently saw Valley of Gwangi for the first time, right?
I did.
How did you feel about the fact that Harryhausen reused the whole elephant idea in that movie, and that he had a T-Rex, or Allosaurus, fighting an elephant in that movie?
It was way less interesting in Valley of Gwangi. Like, I tuned out kind of watching that scene because it's exactly the same.
It took me by surprise when I saw the movie for the first time, although it shouldn't have, because Harryhausen has reused ideas before.
Emir's design was reused in Clash of the Titans. Emir is the monster in 20 Million Miles to Earth, by the way.
Yeah, he drew heavy inspiration from Ymir when sculpting the Titan.
Partially
also,
yeah, go ahead.
Also, he used the whole skeleton fight thing in multiple movies. So,
yeah, well, and it's understandable. Ymir is an incredible monster design. It's great. It's a kind of Godzilla type of thing. Let me look up the year. That's gonna bother me. I wrote down 1950 something because I didn't remember, but I better find out because I want to see if it's pre or post Godzilla. I think it's after Godzilla though. Let's see.
Probably because
57. Yeah, it's 57.
Yeah, I was going to say, it probably is post-Godzilla because, 20,000 Fathoms was, a year before Godzilla.
Yeah, that was one of the major inspirations. Do you think that maybe Ymir was him going, hey, Godzilla, I see that you were more successful than me. Let me see if I can kind of take some of your mojo and lift it over here. Do you think there was any of that?
No, because 20 Million Miles to Earth doesn't feel like a Godzilla movie in any way to me.
I'm just talking about the design.
No, not really, because even in terms of the design, he's way more humanoid in his basic shape than Godzilla is,
Mm-hmm.
He has a tail, but apart from that, he doesn't bear too much resemblance to Godzilla.
I just thought kind of humanoid dinosaur mix, that's kind of what Godzilla was supposed to be initially, so I don't know, it kind of jumped out to me. Anyway, though, so
in the same way that you, oddly enough, didn't wind up with any kaiju movies on your list. I felt kind of bad because I didn't have any. I wound up not having any Harryhausen films on my list.
Yeah.
Mostly because I'm more of a fan of the second phase of his career, which is more fantasy films.
I see, and that's just not really my bag. I'm not a big fan of your sword and sorcery kind of fantasy stuff. It's fine. It's just not my bag. But out of his earlier bag. Weird eggs, I'm about that.
But out of his earlier sci-fi movies, I think 20 Million Miles to Earth is probably the best.
Yeah.
Simply because all of his movies have spectacular special effects, but oftentimes those early ones, it's it's still an early B-movie sci-fi, and the human story winds up being really lackluster or whatever.
This is definitely a B-movie. I think what makes it better is that it has kind of two science fiction ideas that it can kind of play with. You've got the monster, but the monster doesn't really become a thing until a half hour in. But the rest of it, you've got this ship crash and the fact that we've finally been able to master interstellar travel and we're able to go to Venus, which apparently people can walk on, even though it's one of the gas giants. They get into that.
Venus?
The planet Venus. They get into that. It's all made of sulfur. It's still bullshit. So what's really great about it, though, again, it opens with a bang, quite literally. It just kind of starts. It's just we're going 20 million miles to Earth. The ship crashes in the middle of fucking Italy. Or Sicily, more precisely. This fucking people with stereotypical accents all over the place. It's great. And I think also, it takes the B-movie charm and it really plays it up. At this point, the B-movie formula had really been perfected, and the charming aspects of it, if you did it right, it's really fun and really engaging and really and just it has a very specific tone that I think works for this kind of thing. where you've got your kind of wayward hero, and you've got your tough but still kind of sensitive lady love interest, and you've got your mentor and your military leaders and all that. And you got your kid. There's a kid in this. You got your scientific colleague. All that shit. It's all there. It's all done really well. All the actors are great. I especially like the guy who plays the scientific lead. I don't remember his name, but he's great. He buys the creature's egg off of a kid who helped save the astronaut from the shipwreck. He finds like this canister that was just sent overboard at one point, and it's got the egg of Amir inside of it. He sells it to the doctor for like fucking 200 lira for whatever that amount is, whatever that amounts to in modern U.S. currency. This kid acts like it's a fortune because he wants to buy a horse with it. Or no, wait, oh no, with the 200 lira, he wants to buy a cowboy hat, and he gets that. So we know that 200 lira is enough to buy a fucking cowboy hat, but we don't know if it's enough to buy a horse because he wants to get that later. Anyway, so. All the cast is really good. The human story is well paced. It's not like the most breakneck thing you've ever seen. They're not the most terribly complex or necessarily even likable characters, but they work for the story. The story is well paced. It's well constructed. The situation is played rather realistically, despite the time period. It's played well where it's like this American fucking catastrophe happens in the middle of Sicily. This unknown alien life form escapes, ends up killing somebody, and they're like, the Italian government is naturally like, well, I want this thing dead. We're not fucking around, we're gonna kill it. And the United States general was like, to the main hero guy, because the main hero guy's all pissed, like, we need to study it, there's important shit in it that we can like use to master radiation absorption or whatever, because that's another kind of Godzilla-esque thing about it, is that he wants to study it because it can resist radiation and stuff. And it can also turn sulfur into energy, which is also apparently a thing that he wants to exploit or at least study. So he's like, I don't want it dead. So he tries to capture it and he succeeds, but the Italian government tries to kill it. I like that. And then once it finally gets really big, it's really fun when it goes on a rampage through Sicily. The elephant scene is great. It's not as good as this. Again, it's not as good as the scene where the guy tries to capture it earlier when it's more human-sized, but it's still really great.
Well, that's really the standout scene to me. There's always one scene in a Harryhausen film that like grabs you and just sticks in your memory. You look at like It Came From Beneath the Sea, and it's the octopus wrapping itself around the Golden Gate Bridge. You look at Valley of Gwangi later on, and it's the lassoing scene. And in this, it really is that barn sequence.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's a really great scene. What I also like is that the monster isn't just instantly vicious for no reason. It doesn't eat meat. It eats raw sulfur. And then I think at one point it eats like some corn. Maybe there's some sulfur in there. Who knows? And so it doesn't just, especially that fucking shady Sicilian fucking corn. There's so much sulfur in there, dude. You have no idea. They don't care. They don't give a shit. There's one point where it just goes like running through this herd of sheep, and that effect doesn't look real good. Like there's like this stock footage of just some sheep, and like you see Emir kind of walk in front of it, and it doesn't look great, but it plays to the character. He's not just this vicious monster for no reason. He's just this scared like child basically wandering around trying to find food. And then all these people come after him, and he doesn't kill anybody until provoked either. Like at one point, a farmer gets real scared and like shoves a pitchfork into his back, and it's only at that point that he kills someone. And when he kills the farmer, I got mad Jurassic Park vibes, like raptors mauling somebody, because the way Amir kills this guy is not the way your typical monster kills somebody in one of these B movies from the 50s. He like lunges and jumps on top of him and rips him apart. It's like an animal mauling. It's not like just a bite and then a rip. It's a mauling. And it's shot really well. Most of it's done in shadow. At one point, the main human lead is able to pull Amir off a little bit, but Amir jumps back on and keeps attacking. It's great. It's really solid. The ending is kind of lackluster. All of these movies kind of have just kind of like, they kind of peter out towards the end. It's kind of the same.
Yeah, all of your 50s B monster movies, they just sort of have to have the ending where you kill the monster very quickly.
The
and
monster
it's like, oh.
dies, they cut back to the male lead and the love interest, they kiss, and then there's an end title card. That's it. And they all end the same way, and this is no different. But
Like, I don't know if you've ever watched Tarantula, but at the end of
not
that
all
movie,
of it. I don't like Tarantula.
but at the end of that movie, they've tried every other way to kill it, and finally they like napalm it, and that does it. And I'm like, well, too bad you didn't think of that before.
Yeah, I guess it's because it's hairy and lights on fire. Fuck spiders, man. I don't like spiders. If I've never made a secret of that before.
Oh God, I was watching that movie with my grandmother and my uncle, and they're both terrified of spiders, and like I was having such a fun time because they were getting so freaked out by this fucking movie.
See, I wouldn't be freaked out by Tarantula though, because I was kidding. That watching that movie has nothing to do with me being. I do have arachnophobia, but it's not because of that. Like the black and white tone of it and the way the spider looks, like it's not scary.
I think what did it for them is that I told them the fact that it was a real spider, and like they filmed it on.
But it's so poorly. That's not poorly. Like these special effects aren't bad, but you can tell it's composited, and you can tell that it's not really a giant spider. It's like a small spider.
Well, some of your better sequences are actually before it gets that big, like when it breaks out of the lab and you see it crawling out of the lab door or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. It's a little creepy because it's moving faster at that point too, so it's kind of scurrying around. Like that's what I don't like about spiders is when they're scurrying around. Like, ugh, the worst. I hate them. Anyway, so 20 Million Miles to Earth is great. It's the best of its breed. Give it a go. Really, really solid. My favorite Harryhausen movie. And I think his best effects work too, because he only has one thing that he has to work with, so it looks really good. So much better than The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. That movie does not hold up at all. Anyway, so you're number 4.
Yes. No, 3.
Oh, you're number 3. My bad. Go ahead. Sorry.
I have the we're going back to H.G. Wells.